Can Sukuna solo all of Jujutsu Kaisen? You're probably shocked and all at such a question, but you know what? Sit down and enjoy the ride. Trust me. In Jujutsu Kaisen, a 20-finger Sukuna has a 30-plus chapter run against all of Jujutsu High, including Gojo, and it really had me thinking about a pretty fun scenario that I know we'll never see. This being, what if Sukuna at full power and everything he has now went up against everyone in Jujutsu Kaisen all at once, including Gojo? Of course, I'll be primarily talking about the stronger characters of Jujutsu Kaisen for the other side, as really anybody not relative to the heavy hitters will be a non-factor. The weaker characters will still be there, but I'll explain why they don't really make any difference. With that said, to let you know how this video is going to go, first, I'll quickly go over Sukuna, and he'll be composite in terms of his story. So basically, all abilities he has access to, his stats, and everything that's relevant to this massive battle. Then, I'll address the other side. They'll also be composite. This includes Gojo, and really anybody else in the series. This is mostly for Yuji as he has the awakening, but he's not at his full strength right now. So I want to accommodate and give Yuji like full health, full power. I'll also include all other factors into this battle, and lastly, how I think it's going to play out. Now I value both the time of you and I, so let's get into it. Ryomen Sukuna, the demon that lies beyond the devil. A sorcerer that was stated to be Calamity incarnate himself within the peak of Jujutsu sorcery. First and foremost, Sukuna hosts an insane amount of cursed energy and has equally insane control of it. As Yuta states that Sukuna has more than double his own cursed energy reserves, whereas Kashimo states that Sukuna can match the Six Eyes in terms of efficiency when it comes to utilizing cursed energy. Sukuna also boasts a massive cursed energy output on top of all this, as he's not only able to match Satoru Gojo hand to hand, but able to cut Ryu Ishigori like butter with cleave, while not even being at his full power. This same Ryu Ishigori that Yuta could not damage without Earl's Thin Icebreaker, a technique that will shatter space itself on top of its opponent. Even then, Ryu was able to eat a good amount of these attacks directly, a testament to his output overall. On top of all this, after 30 plus chapters of Sukuna fighting, chapter 258 would begin with a monologue that speaks about a massively nerfed Sukuna having his cursed energy output greatly reduced by Yuji, being able to regenerate his other two hands, and still completely decimate the sorcerers of Jujutsu High. Or at least he would have been able to, unless Yuji didn't directly strike 7 black flashes at the boundary between his and Megami's soul. Basically telling us that the only reason why Sukuna wasn't able to regenerate and end the battle there was because of Yuji landing 7 black flashes on him and keeping him weak. The way I see this is, even as Sukuna's output and control over Megami's body at 20 fingers has been ridiculously weakened, he still has so much base strength that if his physical body and brain were able to be healed back to normal, he would destroy our heroes handily, including the newly awakened Yuji. Yuji also admits something similar to this himself in chapter 250, as he says we're up against the strongest sorcerer right now. I don't want to think what would happen if we can't stop him here. This reinforcing that Sukuna being as weakened as he is at the moment of their fight is an opportunity that they need to capitalize on, because if he regains his strength at any point, it's over. More threatening than Sukuna's strength in my opinion is his speed. Sukuna has displayed ridiculous levels of speed, being able to easily outspeed Phantom Beast Amber Kashimo, Blitz Jogo multiple times in their battle, and blitz Choso's piercing blood by simultaneously dodging and piercing him before he could even see it. The first time we see Sukuna actually be hit a consecutive amount of times by anyone that is not named Gojo is after he would be placing Yuta's domain, where he would have his movement restricted due to being contained in a barrier, Yuta's stats being increased due to having his domain open, unable to use all 4 of his arms since he needed 2 to maintain his hollow wicker basket, and Yuji striking him to loosen his control over Megami's body. On top of all this, Yuta himself even states that if it weren't for the after effects of his battle with Gojo, we wouldn't even have a second to spare to use our reverse curse techniques. He would have annihilated us in an instant. Last and most importantly is Sukuna's battle IQ as a fighter. Sukuna holds the highest tactical intellect as a fighter in the series, in my opinion, as he has at least more than twice been able to single-handedly fight armies of sorcerers. In a series such as Jujutsu Kaisen, where deceiving your opponents in battle and making plays seem to have a bigger role than just having a lot of power and strength, being able to fight multiple characters with their own respective traits, strategies, and curse techniques at once is more impressive than it initially seems, as again, the more people you have, the higher chance you have to catch the big opponent off guard, and the more that the opponent will have to be on guard. Jujutsu Kaisen fights aren't, to me, just a battle of who's stronger, but also a battle of strategy. This is why in Jujutsu Kaisen, playing as a team tends to increase the battle potency of both fighters and allows them to hang with people they really shouldn't on their own. Sukuna being able to match and overcome massive teams of very powerful sorcerers and their strategies is an insane testament to his ability to properly manage difficult situations and multiple fighters. There's just also his ability to utilize binding vows to his benefit no matter the situation. Sukuna understands that self-imposed binding vows at worst will only take away what they have given you. And Sukuna abuses this system to bring his sorcery to a level where it will defy concepts such as space itself and bisect it. One last thing is Angel's statement from chapter 228. Angel states that Gojo made a mistake of showing that he can heal a burnt out technique to Sukuna, and begins to explain that Sukuna upon first glance was able to split his spear into 20 objects. This shows that Sukuna can learn anything he doesn't know and doesn't require a condition for just by seeing it one time. I never see Sukuna's battle intelligence mentioned, but I believe it also matters. Now, as if Sukuna's strength and speed weren't already too much for anybody not named Gojo, we'll very briefly cover his techniques to reinforce that, really, most sorcerers aren't touching him at his full strength. Sukuna can launch slashes with the technique of dismantle, and extend this technique's target area to the world itself, allowing them to become slashes that can cut the world, and by proxy, slashes that can cut anything within this world, or in other words, anything that he wants. However, he can currently only perform this technique under the condition that he uses two of his hands to create the hand sign of his domain expansion and uses a third hand to point the direction he wants it to go in. He must always do this in order to activate the technique. Sukuna also has access to Cleave, a direct physical contact that will adjust itself according to its target's durability and curse energy, cutting them instantly. Sukuna can also use this on any structures or buildings, surroundings, things like that, and it will always negate durability. Furnace. This technique can only be used after both Cleave and Dismantle have been used on its target, as the slashing techniques serve as the preparation of his meal, and the furnace serves to cook them alive. It's a small fire arrow with massive firepower, but despite this, it lacks speed and has a very short range. Sukuna also has access to the Malevolent Shrine. When compared to all domain expansions within the series, the Malevolent Shrine remains supreme. Sukuna has the ability to cast this domain into the real world at a maximum radius of 200 meteors. He will then begin to relentlessly slash everything within it, including his opponent with either Dismantle or Cleave. After slicing his opponent, everything else that has been destroyed within the domain will be imbued with an explosive curse energy that is set to trigger upon contact with his furnace. And upon igniting the domain with his flames, everything imbued with the explosive curse energy will explode, creating a massive chain explosion vortex, as Sukuna contains all of this carnage within the domain's range, due to placing a condition that only living beings can escape it. Due to this domain having no barrier, its short hit effect can strike the outside of another person's barrier, causing it to be destroyed from the outside in the event that he enters a domain tug of war, giving him an easy win. Sukuna also has access to domain amplification and enough finesse with it to swap in between that and his curse techniques when fighting. Reverse curse technique potent enough to regenerate an entire arm instantly at full strength. The technique ritual enhancements through having 4 arms and 2 mouths, Kamutoke discharging instant lightning bolts, and lastly, the 10 shadows is an issue, but I'm gonna give him that technique since he's composite in this scenario, and his restored domain expansion does seem to resemble it massively, displaying that it's not completely gone from him. Sukuna has an overwhelming chart of stats and abilities, and there is none that can step to him currently, one-on-one. Except maybe Satoru Gojo. The Child of Fate stands head and heels above the rest of his generation, giving not only them, but the entire world their only true chance of defeating Sukuna in any situation of the series. Gojo would be able to fight a 20-finger Megami possessed Sukuna for about 13 chapters straight, in a massive battle that would conclude with the rules of the world itself being bisected by the one who seeks to destroy it. No matter how we speak about Sukuna versus everyone in Jujutsu Kaisen, the battle still solely depends on Gojo and how he decides to battle him. And let's be honest, I'm sure that Gojo is going to, no matter what, always choose to take on Sukuna alone before letting anybody else do so. So I'll speak about that. Then I'll speak about what would happen if everybody was just dropped in front of Sukuna and they all face him at the same time, and why I believe that just only makes things go in Sukuna's favor much more. Gojo, first and foremost, does not know the capabilities of a 4-armed Sukuna. He would enter that battle alone all the same and tell students to stick behind until the battle was either over or until Sukuna was on their level of strength. Which through and after that entire battle, he still wasn't, and even as of chapter 260 he isn't. All strategies they also seem to employ within this battle do not include Gojo either. Gojo served as the beginning solo act to the gauntlet that Sukuna would have to run in the Shinjuku Showdown, and I think it would just stay that way regardless. In the event that Gojo fights a 20-finger forearm Sukuna alone, to give the rest of the characters a better chance once he's gone, I believe that their contests of domain expansions will ultimately go the same. Maybe Sukuna can pull off some shenanigans with his multiple arms and when they're doing hand-to-hand combat inside of the domains, but I personally do not think that there's anything to suggest that Sukuna with everything he has at full power does any better than before. As it was stated in chapter 259, Gojo had forced Sukuna to change his condition so many times that he couldn't even activate his furnace after using his domain expansion. Gojo put up a very difficult battle against Sukuna no matter how people want to spin it, and to me, that only reinforces this. However, 231 and onward, where they've lost access to their domains, to me, is a different story. As Sukuna has access to the world cutting slash, he isn't really going to need to rely on the Shikigami like he did before. Gojo and Sukuna are super intelligent fighters. It's not easy to figure out how they'd interact there, but I'd wager that Sukuna would have a much easier time landing that world cutting slash and would not need to take the purple to catch Gojo off guard. I don't even think the unlimited hollow purple dupe out in 235 would happen, as that required Sukuna to have his Shikigami manifested and Gojo taking advantage of that to trick him. Sukuna would primarily be using his slashing techniques and domain amplification, as he only had Mahoraga out with the purpose of gaining a blueprint to learn the world cutting slash in the first place. From there on, he decimates the rest of the sorcerers, as they wouldn't be able to deal with the Sukuna that didn't eat an unlimited hollow purple to the face. But wouldn't having a bunch of sorcerers to help Gojo against Sukuna make things better for him? Let's talk about that scenario. Okay, well, here's where things only get worse for Gojo, even with all the help that he'd get. Why? Because the Gojo, again, is a solo act. There have been a couple of statements that reinforce this, and even imply that Gojo receiving any help would do nothing but make his capacity for battle go down. Chapter 235. When Gojo finally prepares the unlimited hollow purple, Sukuna believed that it would be fatal for him in the event that he hit it, implying that it played a massive role in weakening him. Yuta in this chapter states that if a burden like him were out there, Gojo wouldn't have been able to do this. This is obvious because it would hit Yuta as well, preventing Gojo from pulling off this not only ridiculously powerful technique, but this technique that requires a lot of very intelligent setup in order to dupe Sukuna 3 times consecutively. People will say Yuta's lowballing himself here. Nobody that proclaims outright they'll be the one to kill Kenjaku is lowballing themselves. Nobody that claims to be able to take on Mahoraga directly is underestimating themselves. That narrative is complete nonsense to me. Toji, when fighting against Gojo in their first round, was able to outplay Gojo entirely because of the hostage situation. Toji not only used Amanai to his advantage in wearing Gojo down due to fatigue, but Toji was also able to stab Gojo with the inverted Spear of Heaven due to Gojo believing that he had left the fight to go get to Amanai. Things like this are why Gojo is typically sent on missions alone and why he prefers it that way. If this battle were to play out with everyone alongside Gojo fighting a full power Sukuna, Sukuna is going to individually crush them with ease before most of them can realize what's even going on. And Gojo will be put in a very difficult spot where he's going to have to focus on saving his teammates and protecting them from Sukuna, as he's fighting Sukuna, and this, by proxy, only gives Sukuna ample opportunity to find an opening to launch a world-cutting dismantle on Gojo. I can imagine Gojo trying to save an awakened Yuji from Sukuna's dismantles just for him to run over to Higuruma and cleave him before he realizes it. All of this carnage would also prevent Gojo from locking in and truly enjoying the fight, as he wouldn't be able to focus on Sukuna solely. The side effect of this, no black flashes and no awakening. It'd just be a disaster all around for everybody to fight alongside Gojo, and in my opinion, things can only go better if he's fighting a 20-finger Sukuna alone. I also think that a lot of people forget that a good amount of the progress he made in the Sukuna raid is due to Sukuna just playing and toying around with his food, because he's just hitting black flashes after again fighting for 30 chapters straight. And the statement from Uraume at the end of chapter 252 only reinforces this. He's also made it his priority to not only defeat Yuji, but crush his spirit before anything else. A completely locked in, bloodlusted Sukuna would be a different story. I'll go over a couple of counter arguments though. I do believe dropping Higuruma to confiscate Sukuna before he fights Gojo would be a valid plan, but that would, as we know, only remove Kamutoke from the situation, and I don't think that'd do anything but just allow the other characters to not die faster. There's also Gojo opening his domain expansion while others are around to directly hit Sukuna, and I mean, I just can't see that playing out. Is everybody going to be holding on to Gojo so he doesn't hit them with a limited void either? Will they try to attack Sukuna as he tries to clash with Gojo, just for him to send dismantles their way with his other 2 arms? I don't really see how Gojo gets off the domain expansion with everybody present. And this is a bit headcanon-y, but knowing how Sukuna tends to break all the rules of Jujutsu, and it's stated that his 4 arms are one of the greatest advantages that a sorcerer could have, I would very much wager that Sukuna can cast Jujutsu with 2 arms while using the other 2 to cast the domain expansion. Gojo has also displayed hesitation when it came to the disaster spirits killing off civilians, so he wouldn't use his domain expansion. Imagine Sukuna putting him in the same predicament with his students, basically what he's devoted his entire life purpose to. 0.2 is an option, but I don't really know. He didn't use it against Sukuna in their original fight for a reason when it really did seem like a viable option. I do think it's a factor though. Maybe they could use 0.2 on Sukuna and just launch a bunch of attacks at him at the same time. But then again, like, it would also hit his teammates. It's a sticky situation. When it comes to the students of Jujutsu High, people will bring up the 1 month of training, and I don't think anything the sorcerers of Jujutsu High except for Gojo have done has increased their stats significantly, let alone being close enough to make a difference against a 20-finger Sukuna, as again, Sukuna stated that none of them surpassed Ryu Ishiguri in durability, even after the training. The same Ryu he was able to speed blitz and one-shot simultaneously. And during the entire Sukuna raid, all Sukuna speaks about is how their defenses in terms of Jujutsu has been improved. Obviously, we now know that they did the swap training, swapping their bodies in order to understand Jujutsu better, but not increase their stats, curse energy, etc. Despite this, none could stop them at full power, as again, Yuta states that Sukuna would have annihilated them all instantly if Gojo had never been there to weaken him in the first place. Sukuna again has been stated to annihilate armies containing monsters such as Angel within the Heian period, the golden age of sorcery. With Sukuna now being stronger than ever before, I don't think he'd have much trouble doing the same to the entire cast, especially if him regaining his arms in the state he's in on chapter 258 is enough to be a death sentence to the organization of Jujutsu High. All he'd have to do is find a way to eliminate Gojo, which would be easier than before due to Gojo being held back by his teammates, and Sukuna using them as diversions as they get cut and carved, and him not needing to take a bad beating to adapt to the Limitless this time around. From there, he wipes the rest of the cast handily as they serve as nothing but obstacles for Gojo to navigate around in a massive battle. In the instance we play it out like it happened in the manga, Sukuna will be in a much better state and destroy the entire cast right after Gojo. Yuji, Yuta, Maki, Hakari, whoever cannot do anything to Sukuna if Gojo does not critically damage him, which he won't in this scenario. With that said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what your opinions are and what you think of the video, and feel free to leave your thoughts below. I'm bound to get someone talking about glazing. Anyways, with that said, I'll catch you on the next one. Peace out.